EWTN, sharing the splendor of truth. The following is an episode from the best of The Journey Home.
Good evening and welcome to The Journey Home. My name is Marcus Grodi, your host for this program. I hope you've been having a good summer. Now summer's winding down, and many of us are getting ready for classes to start, and all of our families are bustling around getting ready for the fall. But I've got another good conversion story that I want you to hear. Brent Stubbs is a former Pentecostal. He's joined us, but as we'll talk in a moment, the term Pentecostal has to be defined and clarified because for many of our minds it means a lot of things, but I can tell you one thing it wasn't Catholic. Is that right, Brent?
Yes, that's right.
Welcome to The Journey Home. It's great to have you on the program. But as I said, the word Pentecostal as a label means a lot of things.
Certainly does. I grew up in, my parents or my father actually had a kind of conversion experience about 19, went into a church, and up front was a guy playing a Fender Strat. He's a guitarist, and found out that up front the church was Assemblies of God, and met my wife there, or met his wife there, my mother, and so subsequently I grew up in the Assemblies of God, which in the history of Pentecostalism was kind of a later development. If you know, the whole thing's kind of a later development to begin with, but 20 or so years into Pentecostalism
itself, because it had begun back in Azusa Street in California about 100 or so years ago.
Correct.
And I didn't want to get you off into the description phase too. My fault on that, but just our audience needs to know that, which happens often, even when we say former Anglican. What does that mean? It has a lot of layers to it, and Pentecostal brings with it a lot of different layers. We begin with your story way back when. You really come from a long route, though, of very committed Christian men and women.
Absolutely, and I feel very fortunate to have been born into a family where the Christian faith came with just part of the ritual. I mean, I never doubted God's existence. I was very fortunate to have two parents who loved the Lord very, very much. My father had the conversion experience, a radical conversion experience, as well as my mother in their late teen years, and met each other, and my mother asked my father for, did he need a ride home? And the rest is history. But yeah, it was on my mother's side, her grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, built the first Assemblies of God church in Georgia. And then on my father's side, it's kind of a long history going back of kind of street preachers, evangelists who would, my grandmother's mother was known for going on casino ships and pushing over tables and playing her guitar and, calling sinners to repent.
So it's in the genes.
It was definitely in the genes.
All right. So your parents had been brought up with the Assembly of God background, both of them, and that's where they experienced their own rebirth of faith within that tradition?
Well, it was kind of they picked that denomination from the get-go, and so that was the denomination I grew up in. And so with that, in the Assemblies of God or any, what would you say, Trinitarian Pentecostal denomination, there was the affirmation of the charismatic gifts. So I grew up with tongues, interpretations of tongues, those kind of experiences, and a belief in miracles. And so that was always a part of my psyche. It was that God was present. His immanence was always in my consciousness. I can never remember a time where I doubted God.